All right. Thanks everybody for coming. Got a couple people here in the room. My name is Bill Kenney. I was here for the first investor series. I did the Burr presentation. And this one is about finding and closing motivated seller deals. So up on the screen, you can see a couple of my businesses. For a long time, back in my investing career started pretty much really heavily back in 2013. And that's when we started consistently mailing and working to find motivated seller leads. And so we did that from 2013, kind of a business partner and I loosely kind of wholesaling. And then we were also buying for our rental portfolio. But in 2018, we put our company together. And that's what we call there the top one, MDWB Home Buyer. So we were concentrating in Maryland and West Virginia, mostly Washington County, Maryland, and Frederick County, Maryland. Also the Eastern Panhandle, West Virginia, Morgan, Berkeley County primarily, and Jefferson. So that's like Martinsburg, Charlestown, Berkeley Springs, Hagerstown, and Frederick. So those are the kind of the core areas we were looking for motivated sellers to buy properties. So when we did that, we started a meetup group to try to build our network. And when we got deals, we would take it to our meetup group and sell it, and then other people would come. And so just to kind of grow our network and build our network, that's what we call the I-81 Real Estate Investor Group. So we did that until about a year ago. And a year ago, we first 2018 to 2022, we were flipping, we were wholesaling, we were rehabbing and holding rentals. We were doing our meetup group. And we really wanted to get a little bit more passive. So what we did last year was we kind of switched gears and we moved into buying storage businesses and doing hard money loans. So that's the two companies you see below there. Sandpiper Storage. We have 3 operations all in West Virginia. We just put a $1.5 million operation in Pennsylvania under contract like 2 weeks ago. So our goal is to get 100,000 square foot in storage by the end of the year. With this recent acquisition, it'll take us to about 75,000. Jump Capital, our goal this year is to write $4.5 million in loans. We're about halfway there right now. So that's kind of where we've gone. But in both of those businesses, you still need to lead generate and you still need to find opportunities. So this presentation is about finding those opportunities and kind of going through figuring out if it's a real opportunity and how to get it closed. Okay, so that's who I am. That's my home base is those areas where I just mentioned. I'm still a licensed agent. I still do mostly listings, some buyers. So anybody has referrals out in those areas I talked about, please hit me up. Okay, but let's get into this. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. All right. So everybody comes to this class with something they're looking for. What is it? Do you want to do more deals? Do you want to learn a new skill for your realtor business? Are you looking to buy your first investment property? Or like myself, are you looking for long-term financial freedom? That's what drove me to real estate investing in the early 2010s when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So we're still on that journey, and I don't think we'll ever reach the end point, right? I don't really ever want to retire, but we're still we're gaining passive income. We're building our network. We're doing bigger and better things. And I get the opportunity to meet people like you and talk about what we've done. So that's really, the journey is really the cool part. All right, so we know this very well. This presentation is not always for realtors, but we know that mindset is a super important piece, and that in order for you to do anything, you really have to believe that you can do it, and you really have to work on your mindset, because if you don't believe that you can do it, then you're right? If you believe you can do it, you're also right, because anybody can do the things that we're doing, or be the top realtor in this office, or own 100,000 square feet in storage, or flip 200 homes a year, whatever it is, it can do it because there's other people that are already doing it. Some of the big books for me was obviously the one thing. What's the one thing that you can do such by doing it? Everything is easier. So there's always one thing in your business that you really need to accomplish every day, and you got to figure that out, and you got to do it every day. All that other stuff is just kind of getting in the way. Think and Grow Rich. We know that. Train your mind, train your subconscious mind through auto suggestion. So that's affirmations. Would be the point where if we had a full room, we talk about affirmations. Does anybody want to share an affirmation that's worked for them?
Oh, what? I'm a money magnet, money comes to me easily and effortlessly.
Has that been successful for you?
It has.
Yeah, that's one of the old standard words from Bold, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I like to share one that really helped me out in the beginning when I was lead generating. Lead generation can be hard, and you really don't want to do it a lot of times. But one of the affirmations that I wrote that really helped me was that when I lead generate, I create friendships, and I build my network. And so a lot of the people that I've done deals with, or sellers or buyers, they become friends of mine. And that's really what it is. Like, you're just building your network through lead generation. So if you kind of think of it that way, for me, it helped me get into those cold calls a little bit easier. So
for me, you have reasons or you have results. You can't have both.
Yep, a bold law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bold law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's right.
It's like, okay, you're gonna do it or you aren't.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, no one's gonna grab your hand and take you to 200 flips, right?
Right.
Yeah, you gotta figure out what the one thing is, and you gotta start doing it every
Get off
day.
the pot and do it.
Yeah,
Or,
absolutely.
stop talking about it, stop having excuses.
Yeah, get to work, right?
Right.
Yeah, totally agree. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a big book for me. Are you trading your time for money, or are you building assets that can spin off cash flow? I think I talked about the cash flow quadrant in here, and we kind of know that book, right? What side of the quadrant are you on? I think that's the next slide here. And the fourth book.
The game.
Yeah,
We had a game night with that.
Did you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was fun.
yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
And where the board game where you get
Yeah.
out of the rat race?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You play that?
I played it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun.
Uh-huh.
And then the final book is The Compound Effect. I think about this every day. Are your habits compounding your life in the direction you want to go, or in the opposite way? Such a little habit, whatever it may be, a good habit will compound well over if you do it every day. And what does that mean? Like, 5 lead generation calls every day. It's not that hard, right? Just think if you consistently did that for 10 years, where that would put your business. Or on the opposite side of that, so that's like the hockey stick growth, right? You build your network to a point where it just takes off. Now, on the opposite side of that, what would be a bad habit? Like maybe 1 cigarette every day for 10 years? Where's that going to take you? It doesn't have much of an effect in the beginning, but it takes you downhill over time. So I love that book because it just talks about the little, almost like Atomic Habits, like what's the smallest thing that you can do to really see a big change in your life. So I love that book. That was the first book that brought it home to me. Yeah, I had to look over there to see it. Yeah, let me get rid of it. Oh, shoot, now we're back to this problem. Yeah, I don't have my cursor. No, I don't think I can, sorry. Well, we'll figure it out. Man. Really difficult.
There we go.
Yeah, that killed the share though. Let me, we're gonna fix this here so everybody can get on the same page. And we'll drop that down. There we go. That might help. Sorry, guys out there in Zoomville.
Yeah, because we couldn't see,
Is that better?
there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Zoomers were fine. It was just.
Yeah. All right, so we just talked about this. What quadrant are you in the rich dad cash flow quadrant? You really, in the beginning, you want to figure out where you are now, where you want to be, what skills do you need to get there, and does your schedule match your goals? So if you say you want to be a top performing realtor, does your schedule match that of a top performing realtor? If you want to flip one house a month, does your schedule match that? If not, then are you really going to achieve that goal? No. So where are you when it comes to the cash flow quadrant? For me, I want to be an investor. I want with my hard money business, I want my money to do all the hard work for me. Sure, I still got to underwrite deals and I got to, raise money and I got to manage that. But once my network gets big enough, those kind of investments are just going to keep coming my way. So opportunities are going to come my way. So I want my money to earn, the rewards of my time. I don't want to have to trade my time for money like an employee. You got to get up every day and you got to go in there. When you stop going in, other than on your vacation, you're not getting your check. So with this, we want to get from the E and S where we're trading our time for money to the right side of the equation where we're a business owner, where our people or our systems, our processes are earning us income or our investments are earning us income. That's where I want to get to. All right, so it doesn't make sense to look at motivated seller leads or find deals if we don't know what a deal is. We agree with that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this is what a deal is for me. If we're going to flip a single family house, I do have a wholesale fee in there. So this could be, say you're going to wholesale something. This could be if you're going to flip it. This could be if you're going to hold it. So you want to look at the after repair value of the property. So you're going to look at this beat up 3-bedroom home and you're going to say, if I fix it up, what's it going to be worth when it's all fixed up? That's what we call the ARV. Then we're just going to times that by 70%. We're going to remove the rehab portion. So this is another skill you're going to have to figure out, or you're going to take a contractor with you until that skill set becomes who you are and you understand the rehab. So ARV times 70% minus the rehab. If you're going to wholesale it, you got to pull a little bit more out of it, the wholesale fee, and that would be your max allowable offer. If you're going to flip it, you just need the ARV times 70 minus the rehab. That'd be your max allowable offer. If you want to get it a little bit deeper, and you can, by all means do it. With rentals, we can look at cap rates for the bigger things out there. We don't need to get into that discussion about cap rates, but what we did was when we were going to hold something long term, we kind of looked at it. Was it a 1% deal? Was it a 1.5% deal? A 2% deal? So basically a 2% deal is what we were trying to buy through all those years. And that just meant that if the rent, we knew when the property was fixed up, the rent was going to be $1,000. That meant that we want to be all in for $50,000. So the rent would be 2% of the all in cost. So typically now what we're seeing is 1% deals. Maybe down here, you can't even achieve that number. That would be you're all in for $200,000 and the rent is $2,000. So that's a 1% deal. So that's just kind of like an easy number to look at to say, does this even meet my criteria for looking at this? It's going to be worth 200 fixed up. It needs $50,000 worth of work. I need to buy it for 150. We know the rent's going to be 2,000. All right, well, let's investigate that a little bit deeper because it meets the 1% rule. And that's more for like, 1, 2, 3, 4 units. As you get into the higher stuff, even storage deals, you're talking about cap rates. And then to be a good investor, you need to develop specific skills to make good offers. Obviously, you got to know your market. You got to understand how to comp properties. That's the ARV. You got to understand the level of rehab. The level of rehab is different between, depending on what you're going to do for it. If you're going to hold it as a rental, you may not have to put the granite countertops in. You may, depending on your market, you got to know your market first. You got to know what that rent, what the property is going to command for the rent you need to get. So you need to know those kind of things. But if you're going to flip and you're going to try to max out the sales price of it, then you're probably going to have to use the nicest finishes, things like that. And then know what your buyers are looking for. That would be if you're a wholesaler, flips, rentals, turnkeys, or even if you're an investor-friendly agent. All right, so it all starts with adding value. Being an investor, being a realtor, whatever you're going to do, you have to add value in order to get a good return. So we got to kind of start and say, who are we looking to help? And we're looking to help people out of bad situations. So if it's a tough situation, usually you're going to get rewarded bigger for a tougher situation, right? It's real easy to walk into a house that, the seller's already cleaned up and he already knows what the price of, and he's willing to, put it on the market, right? Like any realtor can walk in there and just put the papers in front of him and sign it, right? Real easy. So there's going to be a ton of people that can do that. And so it's going to be really hard for you to add a lot of additional value there. Now, in the case of a person that's got multiple liens, they're $35,000 behind on their mortgage, the property septic doesn't work, and they've got to sell it in 2 weeks. That's a little bit different situation, isn't it? That's a tougher situation. So you have to figure out how to maneuver all those problems or have the wherewithal to have the money to make the right offer to pay off that mortgage, take the property over, or even maybe do something called a subject to. There's a lot more skill sets that you have to have in order to be able to pull that one off, rather than something that is a lot easier. So the tougher ones, there's going to be less people that can deal with those, and you're going to get rewarded for those. So the people that we were looking to help would be the motivated sellers, distressed homes, people that have money problems, tired landlords, out-of-state sellers. We bought properties from sellers that were in California. They had a management company that wasn't doing them right. They were all the way over in California. The tenants, they weren't putting good tenants in it. They would tear the places up. And so they were just kind of done with this, cycle of abuse, so to speak. But we were in the local market. We knew the value of the properties. We had cash available to buy it. We knew where we needed to buy it, and we could solve that problem for them. There's a lot of people that probably couldn't do that, right? You haven't raised enough private money to be able to solve those problems. So these are the kind of problems that we're looking for. Probate and death. There's always usually a property to sell, and then a lot of times it's distressed. If you have somebody that's been living there for many years, their health's gone down, the property's kind of gone into disarray. So this is a problem. Divorce, usually there's a house involved. We talked about tired landlords. I put that on there twice because, geez, we bought so many properties from those folks. Evictions, people, landlords that only have 1 or 2 properties, have a full-time job. Evictions is a major pain point for them. They don't want to deal with that. We've had to take over properties where we've had to evict the tenants for them, just because it's a scary thing to people to deal with, or they just don't know how to deal with it. And then, extra liens, tax liens, beyond a mortgage lien. Yeah.
You might be getting to this, but where would you say all of your success came in this list? A few of many, but then also, how are you going about finding some of these? Because obviously we're going to look in different areas.
Yeah, that's the next slide. Yeah, we're going to talk all about that. Yeah. So we'll get to all those questions. Yeah, but I will tell you, you did bring up a question there. Who are our top sellers? Out-of-state sellers, elderly folks, and heavily distressed. And sometimes it was all 3 of those together. So it was kind of those things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we already kind of talked about this, how we add value. Your income is in direct proportion to the value you create in this world. So that's an important one. I heard that a long time ago, and it makes a lot of sense. So it'll help you try to become a better person if you understand that. The bigger the problem, the bigger the reward. All right, so there's a couple of ways to go about finding these properties, and it's marketing versus prospecting. Do you guys know the difference of that? Yeah, very simply, it's prospecting is basically going after them, right? You're going to be cold calling them, or you're going to be mailing to them. You're going to be going directly to that person. Marketing could be more of like a billboard or an ad, a Facebook ad or something like that. It could still be somewhat targeted, But really, you're putting it out there and you're wanting them to come to you. It could be like websites and things like that, but prospecting is going after them. Okay. So what we did was we wanted to get very specific on who we wanted to try to find. If we just mailed to everybody in every county, we're going to be wasting a ton of money, right? Because we want to kind of, drill it down a little bit to find the right people that potentially would have some kind of motivation. So we first start by building a list, okay? And there's a lot of ways to do this. You can actually just go to a list provider. There's a ton of them out there. We don't need to talk about specific ones, but you can go buy a list and you can check off the certain boxes that you want. So some of the things that you could buy, the list you could buy would be non-owner occupied properties. Now, why would we buy a non-owner occupied properties list?
That goes back to your rent rate, our landlord.
Exactly, that's right. That would suggest that they don't live there. They could be far away. We're getting down to out-of-state owners, but later on we talk about layering your list. So how many points of motivation can we get on the list? That would be a super strong list. It would probably be a smaller selection of people, but it would be a stronger list because they would have multiple areas of potential motivation. So non-owner occupieds may be there will be motivated sellers in there, right? Why would we target high equity sellers? That's right. We can't do deals without equity, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. If we're flipping, we can't do a deal that's totally levered up, right? Tax liens. That's a serious problem, right? That's kind of like the bomb with the whatever that thing, the wick. That thing's going to blow up, right? There's a timeline on that thing. So people need resolution from that. Pre-foreclosure, those people need help. Now there are laws about going after pre-foreclosures in Maryland, so you'd have to be careful with that. But somebody in pre-foreclosure is at a high risk of losing their home unless someone comes along and solves that problem for them. Out-of-state owners, obviously, they're not seeing the property a lot. They don't know what's going on. There may be people that have owned pieces of land for years and years and years, and they don't know anything about it. And so they have no idea what the value is. They don't even know if it's on the side of a mountain. We bought land like that before. And just because they become motivated over time, they're never going to come back and do anything with it. So that would suggest motivation. Other types of liens, and then courthouse issues like water shutoffs or high grass or broken windows or all that kind of stuff, evictions, those kind of things. You can buy those lists. So if you can get a couple of those motivation factors together, then that's going to be a higher quality of a person that would be interested in selling their property. So we're targeting people that have problems, but once again, we got to come back and we got to give them good solutions, right? We got to create win-win situations. You can also build lists. You can do this yourself. You can do driving for dollars. That's just basically where you drive around neighborhoods, you see houses that you think would be a problem, right? If you see a house, maybe like a duplex, and you see like 6 mattresses on the front lawn, and you see like a dresser with clothes hanging over there, that could be something, right? That means they're in the middle of an eviction. So this is how you build a list. You drive around and look for properties with high grass, or they have, like notice from the city on the front door, right? Or whatever, it's got a hole in the roof or something. It's heavily distressed property. So yeah, people do that all the time. And there's actually apps for driving for dollars. You can drive around and put the address in this app, and then based on what you put in there, it'll mail a postcard that minute. Yeah, all kinds of systems for this kind of stuff. Yeah. For sale by owners, we know that they have issues for sure, right? They're for sale by owner for some strange reason. They couldn't sell, it expired, or they want more than it's worth. Zillow has all kinds of rentals on there. Zillow is probably the top place for rentals nowadays. So you could just grab information from Zillow, people trying to rent their property. Maybe they are having trouble renting it. For a long time, a big strategy was Craigslist was like a top place to do rentals. And you could just go in there and sweep the Craigslist of all the rental landlord phone numbers and just start cold calling them. And you could probably find one to buy. That's what we did. Know tons of people that did that. Expired listings, evictions, networking is a good way to do it. Start telling everybody about what you're doing and people will bring you properties. Attorneys are always dealing with problems. If you have an attorney, I'm sure they're going to call you about a property, an attorney friend. REOs are good properties, and realtors have the inventory too. So that's going after property or building a list to start marketing to or prospecting to. You can also do internet leads. That's not really building a list, but obviously if the information comes back to you, you can put them on a list. But that would be pay-per-click. That's just like Google or Bing ads. Websites, you can attract people through SEO, paid web leads. There's tons of people out there ranking high in search terms. You know, that's what SEO is, a search term that would be we buy houses, or, you know, I need to sell my house fast, or whatever it is. There's people out there that are ranking high in that. They're grabbing leads and they're selling it back, kind of like Zillow does for realtors. Social media, Facebook ads, Craigslist ads, we talked about that. So you got to have a list. Now, so how do we make contact with these folks? So we, what we did for many years consistently, many years, over 10 years, was we did direct mail. So the two pieces of direct mail that I'm most familiar with are just general postcards and what they call yellow letters. You guys heard of yellow letters?
Yeah.
So basically, the realtor community has taken the investor community's yellow letter, and now they call it the golden letter, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So for years and years and years, they called it yellow letters. Basically, it was just a yellow sheet. And you would just write, you know, hey, I'm looking to buy your house at this place, give me a call. And you'd write it in red ink, and then you put it in a hand dressed stamped envelope. And people are going to open that. There's 100% opportunity or 100% chance that they're going to open it. When people get like an invitation style envelope, they open it. And so the postcard's just a little bit cheaper way of doing it. It's postcard stamp. Basically, it just says, hey, we're looking to buy your house for cash. We'll close in 30 days. We'll pay all the closing, no hassles, no fees, all that kind of stuff. And people call us all the time off that. There's a lot of people that the house didn't make sense, but we would kind of follow up with those. And I actually listed a lot of those houses, people with higher equity or people that wanted a cash offer, but didn't really need a cash offer. I would go in and say, well, there's no sense in me giving you this cash offer because you got a beautiful home here. Let's put it on the market and sell it. So I got tons of listings that way. So how we make contact is direct mail. That was huge for us for many years. And we're actually still doing it with our storage. So we mailed out about 300 letters. So we bought a big list. We narrowed the list down of, it was basically storage businesses on the East Coast. We narrowed the list down to we were doing a 1031 exchange. We narrowed it down to kind of where that would fall in with what we could buy. $500,000 to $2.5 million facilities, certain size that we wanted to have. And we just mailed to those folks. We mailed 300 letters. We got one call, and that's the one we put under contract. So this stuff does work. So you can take that same list that you direct mail to, and you can actually cold call it. You can skip trace it. There's plenty of websites out there where you can skip trace the whole list. They'll give you 3 phone numbers. You can buy the really good data. You could buy the poor data, which is cheaper, but they'll give you 3 phone numbers. And the first number is usually the best. And then it kind of goes downhill. Like the third number could be Aunt Sally or something, it's, hey, do you know where, Glenn Miller is? And they may tell you, but you skip trace the list. Your list gets all these phone numbers, and then you can cold call it. For a long time, people were texting. Obviously you got to understand the do not call list, that kind of stuff. You got to be compliant with that. But that's going directly after people, cold calling, texting. A lot of people for many years did RVMs, ringless voicemails. Do you guys know about that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think you got to be careful with that also. I know somebody that got fined for doing that. I mean, they were doing like $25,000. They were just big timing it, but however you can get out there and get after them, right? At that point, you're just kind of leaving a general message and hoping that they call you back. Obviously, it's always best to speak to the person and try to build some rapport. But you can't do that all day long. I mean, at some point you've got to put a bunch of
Actually,
lines in the water.
AI is doing all this work now.
Pardon?
AI is doing all this work now.
Yeah, that would be a good presentation.
Yeah.
You should put that together. Teach me something.
Right.
Yeah. No, but I know there's like chat bots and things like that you can use to reach out to people or talk to them. So back to this, networking has been a really good way to find properties. Meetups, that's kind of where all the wholesalers are going, the investors, everybody's looking to kind of match up. Contractors are going there. All the people that are kind of doing the business are going to have the deals. Wholesalers are, landlords are buying from wholesalers at meetups. You can make great contacts. You can sell your stuff there. Masterminds have been really good for us. People are in the larger masterminds are putting deals together all over the nation. That's kind of when you're stepping it up. Wholesalers, agents, title attorneys, lenders. So all these people you should be talking to, they're all going to be. I have a title attorney that calls me every so often about, hey, this guy's trying to sell this property over here because he knows the market really well. He's been working with investors for 15 years. So he's got some good connections. So these are all the kind of people that you should be networking with. And then once again, the internet, we can do pay-per-clicks. We can build a list from that. SEO, we'll get leads from our websites, social media. We're always doing social media as realtors, right? We're getting leads from social media, and then retargeting would be anybody that visited your website. You can retarget them on Facebook or different platforms. Would anybody else have anything to add to this? I covered it all then, good. All right, so we've kind of identified who we want to find, right? And now we've started to make contact with them, marketing and prospecting. Now, we already talked about what a deal is, so we kind of know what a deal is. Now these people are going to start calling you, and I think it's on the next slide, but they're going to start calling you, and you need to know kind of how to walk through this to kind of see if this makes sense or not. They're gonna say, hey, I got this house at 111 Elm Street. It's got a tenant in there. He hasn't been paying for 2 months, and I want $87,000 for it. How do you know if that's a good deal or not? You don't know, right? So you got to start asking some questions, and that's how we learn. So this is the sheet that I've developed over many, many years that kind of helps me understand the situation. And there's 4 bits of information on here that if I can get these 4 bits of information, now that I have an acquisitions person, these are the only 4 questions I need to know from them. And I set this form up in a way that you get to this in a certain sequence, okay? So you're going to ask these first questions up here. All right, what's your name? What's the address? How did you hear about it? Tell me a little bit about the property. What's the address, bedrooms, blah, blah, blah. They get this talking. And then you're starting to build a little rapport with them. And then your first important question is, why are you looking to sell? Your second important question is how soon do you need to sell? Okay. So those first 2 things, we're talking about the motivation there. All right. So we need to know motivation and equity to do deals. The first 2 questions tell us everything we need to know about motivation. Why are you looking to sell? They may tell you, I think that comes up on a later slide, so I'm not going to give that slide up yet, but we need to know why they're looking to sell and how soon they need to sell. That tells us the situation that we're in, okay? Then we're gonna talk a little bit more about the property. We're gonna find out if there's a tenant in there, if it's owner occupied, if it's vacant, what's the condition of the property, rehab needed. A lot of times people don't know this. So sometimes when they're like, I don't really know, it's okay. And then I would try to give them more questions to kind of drag it out of them. If you were gonna stay there, what would you do to it if you were gonna move back into it? And they would say, oh, okay, well, there's a piece of the ceiling in the one room that's kind of falling in or something, and they start to tell you that. So you want to know a little bit about the property, but it's not that important. You're just trying to build rapport with the seller at this point. And then you get down to the bottom here, and I just point blank ask them, how much do you owe on the property? And pretty much 99% of the time, they'll just tell me what they owe on the mortgage, because you've kind of showed yourself as a person that kind of understands what's going. You're trying to diagnose the problem to help them solve it. If they don't tell me that, then I don't know if this is a good deal, because I don't know the equity. I may know the motivation, but I don't know the equity. If they're highly motivated, I'm probably going to go on the appointment. But if I don't know the equity, I could be wasting my time, because they could have just refied it all right back out, right? Probably not if it's distress, but still, a lot of 99% of the time they tell me, and then how much are you looking to get for the property? So they may say, I owe $25,000 on the property. They'll tell me the address. I'll Google it while I'm talking to them. I'll see the Zillow says it's worth 175, right? They'll say they owe $25,000 on it. Okay, that's two pieces of the puzzle, but what do you want for it? They'll say, I want 175 for it. Now, would I go on that appointment? Absolutely, I'd go on that appointment. 100% would go on that appointment.
Would you?
Yes, because they only owe $25,000, right?
Depends on,
Yes.
but if they're stuck on that price,
Well, that's where you have to work your magic. You have to say, nobody in their right mind is going to pay $175,000 for this property that's not worth 175. When we fix it up, it'll be worth 175, and I'll show you. Here's the comps, right? But no one in their right mind is going to pay that price for it, and this is why. And this is what we have to do to it. We have to. You can see on the comps here that the kitchen has been refurbished, right? Your kitchen is 1960s, so just kind of go through the process, right? And you say, this is going to be my offer, you know, which may be $110,000 or whatever. And they may hate you, but in the end, they may be able to list it and get a little bit more for it. But pretty much all the investors are going to use that same criteria, and that's going to be their offer. So I'll go on the appointment if there's motivation and equity.
Now they're paying commission.
That's right. That's right.
They're getting more.
That's right. Yep. And we tell them that kind of stuff. So motivation and equity, you have to know that when you're talking to these folks. So use a guide, something like this, to kind of filter through the deal to see if it makes sense. All right, so that's kind of what we're talking about. Motivation. What does it mean? So here's two questions I'd pose to the group. I need to sell my house in the next 2 weeks versus I'm thinking of selling it in the next year. Which one is motivated?
2 weeks.
That's right. I owe $26,000 and I'm leaving town this week versus I haven't thought about selling until I got your card in the mail.
I owe 26, I'm
Yeah.
leaving next week.
Now, these are extreme examples, but you can see that when you're talking to somebody, you're trying to listen to find out if there's a problem here that I can solve that makes sense. A lot of times people will say that I haven't thought about selling until I got your card. Okay, how can I help you?
Right.
I just want your offer. I just want your cash offer, you know, that's what they'd say. All right, so my tenants have stopped paying and I don't know what to do versus it's a great building in excellent condition. I just wanted to see what you would offer. So you can kind of see these are extreme sides of the equation. Sometimes it's a little more, you know, nebulous or harder to figure out, but if you can pull some motivation out of it, then you can kind of understand if there's something there. On the equity side of it, what do you owe? What do you want? Are they within our strike price? That's it. If they're not, then there's a lot of times where they were motivated for some reason. They owed more than what I could pay as a cash offer, but it still made sense for them to sell it. The property wasn't that bad off. So would I go on the appointment? Yeah, I would list it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's what I was just telling
Yeah.
him, the beauty of being an agent and investor
With-
is either way you can walk out the door, like.
That's right, that's right. Yeah, we just have to listen to what they're telling you and figure it out. I would use the cash offer, which the cash offer is all cash, close in 2 to 3 weeks, no commissions, we pay all your closing costs, leave whatever you want in the house. Who doesn't want that, right? So that would just get me in the door. I would build rapport. I would kind of show them that I know what I'm talking about on the listing side, you know. Here's what, Mr. Seller, this is what I think is best for you. List this property. Here's the comps. Look, I can get you, every investor is going to come in here and offer you $110,000. We can list this property at 175, you know, whatever, something like that. And I would get the listing, you know, 80% of the time. All right, so this is the basic stuff. You guys know this stuff. Property visits. Obviously, you got to show up on time, be professional and confident, have a credibility packet, be prepared, have the comps, the contract, and the rehab worksheet. So you really want to do everything right there when you're at the property. If you got to go back and talk to your partner or something, or run comps when you get back, you know, getting back in front of the seller might be a challenge. So we tried to do everything when we got there. We were ready to go. And then negotiating the deal. We're not going to talk about that. All right, so this is what our system looked like for these leads. For many years, this was the process that we followed. So we had a list, and then we also had a service that was kind of like a list stacker, or it was like it would allow us to monitor our list and remove people from the list after we bought it, or if they said take us off the list, or also how many times we mailed that list. So what we'd want to do is we want to mail the same list about every 3 months. Excuse me, and I'll show you why. But we had different lists. We didn't have just one list. We had multiple lists that we would kind of work through. Okay, so you have your list, you do your mailing, and as those people, we had a system called CallRail, and it had about 10 different unique phone numbers that were local to the area, and then each list would have its own phone number. So we would know what list they were calling in off of, so we could see which lists were most effective. So CallRail basically was it would intake the information, it would tell you what number they called in, it would leave a message, and then it would shoot that message over to our CRM. And then inside CallRail, we could have unique messages for each line. So for instance, right now we have a storage line where we have a line that just basically is devoted to our storage business. You could do a bunch of, we have a line that's devoted to our website. So the calls come in, it says website lead. So we know where the leads are coming from. So as the lead comes in, they leave a message, it goes to our CRM, and then our acquisitions person can get on the phone with them, call them back, listen to that message, call it back, and then work that lead through our CRM. And then inside our CRM, we could follow up with them. So we were obviously trying to set an appointment. So you go down the list, set an appointment, try to sign a contract and build some cash flow or flip it. But if not, then we could just go back into our CRM and we would start the follow-up process. And inside the CRM, there would be automatic texting campaigns that would go out to them once they were a lead inside. So we were following up with that person. The lead came in, we would try, I think it was 7 to 10 times over the first 2 weeks. And then if we couldn't get a hold of them, then we'd set them up on a 30, 60, 90 call. And then the next card would go back out, the next mail card 3 months later. That's how we did it. All right, so this is what our contract looks like. So we say these things, we pay cash, close quick, no repairs. These are all things that people want, right? They want with an investment property. Obviously, if it's heavily distressed, they're not going to be able to list it. It's not going to be financeable. So it's going to be a cash deal anyway, right? No inspections, no appraisals, no agents. So we would walk through the property ourselves and we would make the offer on the spot. There wouldn't be any appraisals because it would be all private money we'd purchase these things with. And you know, I would disclose that I'm an agent, but I'm the buyer in this case. No commission, selling as is, no repairs, leave your junk. And sometimes we help people move if it was a really good deal. But then we also needed a contract that says these things, so we can't use the, obviously the Board of Realtors contract. I guess we could, but you'd be crossing out a bunch of stuff. So we had a contract that an attorney created for us that kind of said this kind of stuff. And then, you know, this is, you guys understand this, the components of a contract. This is a cash sale, as is sale. Obviously got to have an EFD, settlement time and place, buyer pays all the closing costs. We've got to get clear title, but we're not buying it. It's a legal contract, ability to assign it to a new buyer. So that would be if we were going to wholesale something, we would assign it to a new buyer with an assignment contract. We'd have to get access to the property because especially if you're wholesaling it, but we'd want our contractor to go back through and give us the hard estimate. And then the ability to market the property if we were going to wholesale it. So this is kind of the stuff on the right would be the kind of the stuff that I would kind of go down and say, here's our contract. Just understand this is a legal contract. These are all the things that we need to have you understand as you're signing. All right, so most of these deals are not where you take it down on the first call or the first visit. It's tons of follow-up, and we know that in the realtor world. So these are kind of the stats. 44% of the people will give up after the first no, 22 on the second, 14 on the third, 12 on the fourth, which means 92% of people give up before getting the fifth no. Most sales happen on the fifth to eighth contact. So follow-up is everything in this game. Have a structured system to follow up with all leads. All great businesses have great systems. Structured follow-up calls, emails, text, and mail. Set your system for the next 12 months and let it go. So you can't just dip your foot in the water with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Even being a realtor, like you can't do that. It's you're all in and make a full push, set it up and let it rip and stuff will start to happen. And we're stalled again here. Weird. I have to phone a friend here. I don't know what to do. Well, there we go. Okay. All right, sharpen your axe before you cut the tree. You've already taken the first. So this was we did a presentation to a group from our meetup about wholesaling, and we taught a wholesaling class. So this was kind of adapted from that. So preparations for doing this. Obviously, you got to have a marketing or prospect channel. You don't have any business without leads, and that's more apparent than ever now. But that's the same thing for investors. Like we can't do deals without leads. So if you're just an investor out there looking to buy rentals and you're not doing this, then you're going to be 100% dependent on a realtor or a wholesaler. So we really never wanted that. So we built the system ourselves, and it worked pretty well for us. So once you have the leads, where will the calls flow to? And obviously you want to record everything. So you got to have a dedicated phone line for that. You don't want to have the lead come in and miss that message, right? You may never hear from it again. So you've got to have solid systems. Scripts and seller sheets, we talked about that. Follow-up system, got to have a system to follow up. Appointments, property intake sheets, photos, contracts. And then get your contractor, your contract and your investor-friendly attorney to close these things. So that's the basic components of this kind of business. And this is kind of where we had scaled up to at that point. So we didn't have a COO, we did have an operations manager, and we had an acquisitions person. Disposition staff was me. We had plenty of contractors because we were always flipping and rehabbing rentals. And then we had an in-house property manager. And now our business doesn't look like this as much in the last year or so. Now we've farmed out our property management to a property management company. We still have contractors. Obviously, we're still doing, you still got to upkeep your properties. And even with the storage, there's work to be done there. And we do have disposition staff and acquisitions. And we still got to do our lead generation. So that's kind of where we are now. And Yeah, this is my hard money business and this is kind of where we operate. So like I said early on, we're kind of doing loans in this general area and then a little bit on the outside of this area. But it's basically Frederick County, Washington County, Jefferson County, Berkeley County, and Morgan County is over there. We've done some loans down in Winchester. These are hard money loans, and I may talk about that at some point. So you guys can understand what that's all about. But this is also where I'm licensed. So if you have any kind of investor deals that you want to partner on, or you have realtor leads that you want to get a referral on, please reach out to me in these areas, and you know, maybe we'll do a flip together or pay you some money when I sell a house.
All right.
That's it. That's it, guys. You have any questions?
I think there was some questions that came up in the chat.
Is there anybody that's monitoring that?
I guess I can't.
Okay. I see it says talking or typing or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I get to your questions in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not
List,
showing
building a
up
list.
here. I don't know where it's showing up at. It's not showing up in this chat. But I saw the little notification pop up, but there's no questions in the chat here. So I guess if they have a question, they can unmute themselves and ask the question, I suppose.
I should,
They don't have any questions.
okay, awesome. Well, we answered all the questions, I guess.
I have some questions.
Yes,
I'm gonna wait until the panel part. That's great.
yeah,
So
he's on the panel. He can't answer questions. And he can only answer, he can't ask.
I'm not a moderator.
Oh, sure. All right, we're the next one on the panel.
Ask her.
Ask her.
You should do it.
Yep, go ahead.
That's the way. Yeah.
A lot of time to prepare for this.
All right, what are we doing here?
Super prepared for it.
Is this the panel? Is this the
I
panel?
guess.
Okay.
Everybody, how many people are on here?
Just you, Anch, and Bill.
No, you meant.
Oh,
All right, a few people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
What's up, everybody? What's up, Mary? All right, so. Is Anch joining us too?
Yeah, Kim just went to grab her. But she will be.
How's everybody doing? Can everyone in the chat tell me how they're doing?
Can
Yeah,
you see the chat, Andrew?
I can see it.
There's where the chat is.
So they're seeing us. And
Yes.
this is just,
This is just the view, yeah, they're seeing you, they can see you, Andrew.
all right,
I think we're recording this.
awesome, still, all right. It's like, put that 3 times as many people on this.
So you need the.
That would be great, yeah, if I could see the chat happen. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Good.
Cool, Andrew. Doing great, is that, which Andrew is that?
My pen?
As simple as possible, what really is a hard money lender? You wanna talk about your hard money lending?
Yeah, sure.
All right,
So a hard money lender is basically filling a small gap in the lending space where you would have super distressed properties that banks would be less willing to lend on. Obviously, banks ideally, they want properties in good cash flowing position. They want them in good repair. They don't want beat up properties or major problems to deal with. And that's why they usually send an appraiser out to make sure the property's in good condition. The hard money space is basically to help investors rehabilitate these properties. And then if they're gonna hold them, they're gonna refinance out on a bank loan. So These are higher interest loans, very short term. Our loans typically are in and out in 5 to 6 months. We put a 12-month term on them. But we charge our borrowers about 13%, somewhere around 3 points. But they really know going in, they kind of know where they need to negotiate it so that they can get that money closed quickly. We can underwrite it very quickly. We can close quickly. And they get rehab draws. They can use a certain percentage of that to purchase the property, and they get rehab draws to fix the property up. And then at the end, they refinance out, or if they flip it, they sell it. So that's kind of what hard money lending is.
And we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about financing. I want to find out more about how you approach that. So we'll probably have a chance to reiterate about the hard money lending. So welcome everybody to the second half of Winning Wednesday on Investor, what the title of this class is. Investor
Wednesday.
Investor Wednesday. And yeah, so before we jump in on the chat, just where's, maybe everyone can just share what, how many rental units or flips they've done in the past. It's helpful to know kind of where people are coming from. And then I'll maybe go around the room as well. So while people are filling out the chat, you guys can let me know. One, you've done a couple, done 20. Zeros.
Done 10 or 12.
10 or 12, okay.
Yeah. And that's how I became a landlord, because the market turned in, 14, 15 years ago. And I was holding them and wound up renting them, the ones that I couldn't sell at a reasonable profit. So I thought I was going to wind up selling them when the market came back, but fell in love with the tenant being a landlord that, I never sold them.
Probably you've gained tons of equity on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a good thing.
Yeah, because I've done refinancing and loan modifications and all that, so I owe little to nothing on the rentals.
So when you did your first one, did you know you were going to get to 12?
No.
Are you glad you got to 12?
So yeah, so the first one was kind of unique. This was in 2003, 2004. It was a HUD home, and HUD did not post the correct picture online, didn't have the right bedrooms or bathrooms. I mean, it was totally opposite. And the bid had to be in by midnight on Sunday. And I was working like crazy, and I got home Sunday night and it's like 10 o'clock. And I was like, oh, snap, I forgot to go see the property. And I just wound up going online because I knew it was a great, according to the neighborhood and the comps, it was a great deal. So I bidded on it and wound up winning that bid.
Nice.
And then when I went and drove and saw it, I was like, oh, it's brick front, it's a bay window. It has 2 fireplaces, it's 4 bedrooms, it's 3.5 baths. It was nothing like the description. It was a blue vinyl front. It said it had like 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, didn't say anything about fireplace, anything. So like, it was just, when I got there, I was very happy and surprised that it was 10 times better than the description.
Yeah, so it wasn't a horror story.
No, it wasn't.
You survived.
It's it.
Survived.
For a horror story.
No, but I do have a horror story where one
We'll get
flooded.
to those, yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to get people excited about it, not
Well, that was your excitement, right?
yeah. Well, you're not gonna bat 1,000, but you get in the game, you'll be able to build equity. So I think because a lot of people are a little bit newer, I want to touch on kind of mindset. And I think some of your presentation was like the mechanics of investing. But in like the first part of the panel, I'd love to, you kind of did the full intro for Howard. You can introduce yourself. I'll do a quick summary on the experience I have. If anyone has any questions, obviously the chat's easy. You can ask away, just raise your hands. It's interactive. You guys are the priority because you're here in person. Next time you guys got to come here and listen to us in person. So you want to do a quick intro?
Yes.
And then we'll get into the mindset questions.
All right. I'm Anch Thompson. Most people know me as Anch. And I am one of the members of TriQuest Investment Properties. The other members are Paula Emaker, Kadisha Carroll, and we went to Andrew's mastermind class, and we decided to jump in and form an investment team. And we went out there and did some of the things he told us to do, and were able to buy our first property. And we're fixing and flipping it as we speak.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice, congratulations.
And I'm Andrew Hinton, for those that don't know, started investing 7 years ago. We were doing single family fix and flip. We decided to hold, and then had some good success at building a single family portfolio. Invested in a multifamily property in Baltimore. Decided the commercial multifamily was a little bit better for us, although we'll discuss maybe the differences between the multi and the single family. We were able to have some success in early deals, grew over the next few years, raised a lot of money from investors, so that's how we've been able to grow. We can, if anyone has questions, we can touch on that too. As of today, just went under contract for our biggest deal yet. Literally signed this morning, 110 units in Baltimore County. So yeah, I think a big part of our growth has been really making these, big goals, having a big mindset towards investments. I know you've had to do that. I know you're kind of now looking to build your investment portfolio that way. So question number one is, like, really, why did you want to get into investing in the first place? And what do you think helped you build to become, come from a mindset perspective?
So I worked for FedEx out of college for 15 years, and I was on the wrong side of the cash flow equation. I was an employee, I was in management, I was running an operation, I was trading tons of time for money. And I got to the point where everything was just kind of falling apart for me. And, my wife and I were just not getting along. And so I went through a divorce, and I just said, this is the time in my life where I'm going to actually make a change on everything. So I just basically left the company and just tried to just went like on almost like a self-development journey, trying to figure out what was next for me. Like what did I really want to do next that would really fulfill me and get me excited. And I started to listen to a bunch of podcasts. That's kind of back when podcasts were real new. But I was listening to Dave Ramsey's show, and I heard him talking about Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that sounded like something I needed to read. And I went out and read it that like 2 days, read it. And I was like, this is the way, I got to do this. And so I ran out and bought a rental property like within 3 months. And then I was like, okay, I did that. Wow, a big deal. Then I didn't know what to do next. Like I didn't know what a deal was. So it's like you figure out what you want to do, and then you do it, and then you got to figure out, oh, how do I go next? What's the next step? And so that took me a long time to figure that out. And I bought a course, and it said, go out and join your local real estate investors association. And so I did that, and that was kind of like the next big step for me, where I met a ton of people. I learned the BRRRR strategy. I learned wholesaling. I met my business partner. And that was really kind of like getting around the right people, getting big ideas, seeing people do big things. That really pushed me forward to the next level.
Yeah, that's great. So what I heard, and I have a follow-up question, is like the first step wasn't necessarily lead gen. It was like learning, networking, to try to figure out how you can get in the right, be around the right people, get in the right mindset. So
That's right. Yeah, that's a good
investing
point.
became something that followed, like you deciding for yourself that you were going to do it.
Yeah.
And learning a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted something long term. I wanted something where obviously I just wanted to be on the right side of the cash flow quadrant, right? And I didn't know how to do that, but I knew kind of what the next step was. Like I need to meet these people, or I need to do this. And then once I got around these people, some of that stuff started to crystallize a lot more. I started to kind of understand where I needed to go. And then once you know where you're going, that's when you kind of start setting the path of like, these are the things I need to do.
Great. And so your first deal, what was going through your mind ahead of doing that deal? Forget about the mechanics of the deal, like, what was your thinking?
Yeah,
First couple of deals, whatever.
yeah, first deal I did was not really a good deal. I talked about it at the last presentation I did.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, but it actually, the numbers didn't make sense, but I'm glad I did it because it got me in the game. So it was actually probably the best deal I ever did because it got me doing it. And I had to figure out how to make it work. And, you had to do all this different stuff. You had to learn to be a landlord and figure out how to rehab stuff. And then the next part of that was learning how to get the next deal. And that was a journey in itself. So, obviously I was scared. I knew a guy that owned 50 properties in the town where I bought it. And I already knew him prior to me getting into it. So I just went out to him and I said, hey, I want to do this. Help me do it. And he told me what his properties are finance. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks for being about that too.
Yeah.
So what was your feeling kind of headed into the deal that you're doing now that you're just finishing up?
Or my feeling, well, we just wanted to dive in. We took your class and we were like, we're not gonna achieve anything if we sat on the sidelines and sit and analyze. So we were afraid of going into analysis paralysis. And so we decided 3 heads are better than 1. So we formed a team and we didn't have any money. So we were wanting to buy a property without any money. And so we decided that we were going to get this thing 100% funded by private investors, which we did. We reached out to all the people that we knew and our sphere of influence, Khadijah reached out to her clients that were investors, and we were able to pull it all together. And we're one of those success stories where it is possible to get something 100% funded by other investors.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people will have this thing of, oh, I don't have any money. I can't invest because I don't have anything. You can invest. You just have to find other people who are into investing that are wanting to lend their money to you. And it's people that your friends, your family, and you'd be surprised who would be willing to invest in you if they know and trust you.
Yeah, I think they say the why, if the why is big enough, the how goes up, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, both of you guys use the word fear and afraid because I don't think you can be a successful investor if you don't have real human feelings about investing, which includes this is a risk we're taking and it's not going to be all confidence all the time. So you mentioned the big why, you mentioned systems that you now have in place. So the deal is going to go well because you're experienced at this point. But that doesn't change the fact for people getting started, your first deal, we just put in the contract. If I told you I wasn't a little bit nervous that we weren't going to get through it, I'd be lying to you, right? But the end game is so attractive to me, and I'm sure to you guys and to all investors, to me who was doing it, that it makes you encouraged to kind of go down the path of finding a deal and putting it all together. So some takeaways, the learning, the reading, the networking. If you're looking to get started, that's the best place to start. And you're doing it right now in this class, but it doesn't stop here, right? There's books, there's lots of local groups. We're a good resource. I think all of us would be open to providing whatever networking groups or learning resources we have used in the past. So you can just reach out, put in the chat, and we're happy to send those over to you. And then getting over the fear, from a mindset perspective, it's going to be there. You have to manage it. You have to overcome it with some reason that is higher than the drunk monkey, right? That's telling you not to invest because it's expensive, because it's not a good time, it's not a good market, right? These are all reasons we made up that don't have to be real. They can be real and stop you, or they cannot be real and you're just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, I'll just say something to that point. you're gonna have fear because you're doing something that you've never done before.
Right.
So you're gonna have that fear, but you can't just do something just because it seems like a good idea. Like, you didn't do that deal just because it was available for you to do it. You talked to as many people as you could to try to make the best decision possible. And then you've never done it, so there's some fear, but you feel like this is a risk that is a calculated good risk, right? Nobody's up here just buying everything. You just can't do that. You're gonna go out of business. There's tons of people, when the market was going up, they had no business being in the real estate investing space. They're putting money in properties where it's not gonna make any sense. And they're gonna get burned. But in this case, you know, I know Andrew, and I'm sure you are too. You're talking to a lot of people that you know and trust that have done this kind of stuff before, and you're making the best decision that you can. And you just haven't done it before. That's where the fear comes from. So we're not saying just go out there and just do it. You got to do your due diligence for sure, as best you can. And then in the end, you got to take some action.
So let's segue to the action. So you went through a lot on marketing, lead generation around deals, and I think that's probably where we as, you know, realtors have a huge advantage, right? Sourcing new deals. We know how to find owners, we know how to talk to owners, urge them to sell to other people or to us. Was there anybody in the audience and on the webinar that has a way of finding deals that wasn't outlined in Bill's presentation in terms of lead gen or finding? As a challenge, pop quiz.
There's got to be somebody.
Continue to think about it. It's okay if there's nothing.
What was the question?
So we're talking about sourcing new deals. Bill just did a presentation, had outlined a number of ways to find the deals. It was mail, it was prospecting / cold calling, it was networking, it was internet. Were the ones that he had called out.
What's the question?
So what are some
You have another way of.
Oh, okay.
sourcing new deals?
Oh, okay.
Deals other than that.
Oh, yeah.
It was also a good summary of what he went over, is the reinforcement.
Well, Andrew, I kind of,
Yeah,
well, everybody that knows me and in my family and friends and so forth, they know that I'm looking for these type deals. So kind of like what you were saying about the one with the mattress and the this and the tall grass. So my cousin just called me last night and she's like, yeah, I was out walking and I saw this house and the windows have been open and the grass is like up to the waist and there's a sign up on the front of the door. And she took a picture of it and it's from a servicing company and she sent it to me. And they know that I'll pay them for finding properties like that.
Isn't that leveraging driving for dollars? though?
Yeah, but I'm not doing it.
I said leveraging.
Yeah. You're right. I said leveraging. But as I said, it's like similar to what you said, but instead of me doing it, it's, you know, I have
yeah,
people looking for
yeah.
me.
So driving for dollars is kind of like driving around town. For those who don't know, you see a house, maybe it's overgrown, maybe there's broken glass and it doesn't look like anyone's living there, it's abandoned, and you find out how to get a hold of that owner.
Right.
You talked about friends and family who are, I guess, your sphere, and kind of communicating to them that you're always looking.
Right.
I think a lot of these fall into some of the buckets, or maybe like our sub buckets of what Bill decided. Like another thing,
That was a pretty comprehensive list.
it's not rocket science, right?
Yeah,
There's like,
yeah,
there's a
right.
few ways you can market and find deals, and that's, you know, so I don't want to spend too much time on the sourcing. I think Bill just did a great conversation about that. However, maybe we can talk about case studies. So can you think of each of you, Anch, your one deal, and whatever you have that you think of as I don't know, fun story about how you sourced the deal, creatively or non-creatively, however you want to do it.
So yeah, I got a good story for that. So we were direct mailing, this was years ago. And we got a house, we got it under contract, and we would always stick our sign in the yard saying, we buy houses, this phone number, of the house that we were buying. And then, this particular house was like a 2-bed, and we were there, we were like, okay, we can make a 3-bed out of it this way. And we're like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. The contractor took over, and then we left, and then I got a call later that night from a guy that was wholesaling the house across the street. He saw my phone number in the yard, and we were like kind of going back and forth. We'd never met this guy before, but we were kind of going back. He was a wholesaler. We do this, you do this, and this was many years ago where things weren't going like this. So then we had our meetup group, I think it was like a week later, and he came to it. And we were like, oh yeah, you're this guy, you know, and whatever. It's like, well, let's do this deal. So it was like after our meetup, we were in the bar, and we were like, let's agree to it. And we shook hands. We wrote on like a little cocktail napkin. I actually have a picture of it somewhere. We agreed to $42,000. This attorney's gonna close it. We both signed it, and it said like a $2 EMD, and I threw $2 down on the floor. And so we bought that house. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
That's all.
Back and
Yeah,
forth,
it was fun.
I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Is it possible also to check on the MLS? To find deal in the MLS?
absolutely, yeah.
We
Um,
flipped houses off the MLS.
yeah.
Wholesale off the MLS one time, actually. This was years ago, but
So Anch, what about you? How did you find your Good deal.
We got ours through an auction.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell us about
we
that.
were looking at auctions because it seemed like those were the properties that were going for the lowest amount, you know, starting bid were like $5,000. And so one of the auctions we went to was one burnt up row house in Baltimore, but that eventually got way too, like it rose to $200,000.
wow.
In like matter of less than 4 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, but during that, we met a lot of other investors. There were a lot of other investors there, and we were able to network with other investors that were at the auction. But we actually got this property that we have through an auction through the MLS. We bought it for $59,500. That was our final bid.
Nice. It's interesting, both of your stories were like something totally unrelated that was like linked to where you found a deal from. I think you left your card on a house,
Yeah, we left a sign in
A
there,
sign.
yeah.
and was that your,
Yeah, we bought the house across the street, and the
Oh,
guy was
right, right,
wholesaling
right.
that, yeah.
so you had done the investment and you had made people aware that that was
Yeah,
your house. And then the guy came to the networking event. that
Yeah,
you
well, we were
hosted, right?
kind of working, yeah, I don't remember
Was
if
it
we
your,
invited him or, it's our networking group.
yeah,
But yeah, he came to it. That's when we struck up the deal there, at the end of it, yeah.
so you were doing the networking group at the same time as you had put this sign out there, and it was through those kind of company
Yeah, yeah.
efforts.
Yeah, I can't remember if we invited him to it or he just came. But yeah, we did the deal at the bar there.
And you, Anch, was going out to the auction and then meeting someone else differently who was able to source the deal that you got the deal from.
Actually, we got the deal from the MLS. It was the auction house on the MLS.
Oh, it was on that list,
Yes.
to the second deal.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But we had put in an offer on another property that we got the information from an agent in this office who I guess had a relative that was trying to sell a house.
Yeah.
And so we were able to put in an offer on that one, but that one fell through.
Yeah.
But that's another way is other agents.
That's super interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, you gotta think about where are the people that have properties gonna be? Are they gonna be at auctions? Yeah, because they're trying to find properties. They're gonna be at meetups, yeah, they're trying to sell properties or meet other people. So where are these people gonna be that you can meet them?
and it's going to those meetings with an open mind.
Mhm.
So in both situations, it was like you were doing the activities and then you also were open-minded to like just find a new property.
Yeah, always be networking.
Yeah.
Always be networking. You never know. who's watching you or who has a property, you just never know. You gotta put your stuff out there and, the law of attraction, I guess.
Cool.
Right.
And we've ran into other investors while we were out looking for properties. We would be standing there in front of the property and some investor would walk up to us and be like, are you investors too? And we're like, yes. And we'd start talking to them. And that's a great way of meeting other investors who may have properties that they're wanting to unload.
Yeah, you never know where a conversation is gonna lead you. And on that sheet that I was talking about, that kind of that call sheet about, figuring out if it's a deal or not. The last question on there is, do you have any other properties for sale? So, this one doesn't work, but I got this one,
Yeah, sweet. All right, so like I said, anything related to sourcing, hopefully you guys already kind of went through in the last hour. So let's, anyone have questions about negotiating contracts related to investment properties? That's where I would usually have gone next, but most of us are agents, I think, on the Zoom. So let's pass over that one and talk about financing. So how do you usually finance your deals?
We've been relying on private money. I talked about it in the first presentation, not this one, but we've been private money buyers for over 10 years.
And so is it your own cash? Is it hard money or is it?
So in the beginning, it was kind of a hybrid of our cash. We would use the rehab, but we found that we had cash flow problems when we did that. So we actually went to where we would borrow everything. We'd borrow the purchase price, we'd borrow the rehab, we'd borrow the closing cost. And then we take the rehab at closing and put it in a rehab account and then manage the rehab out of that account. So we would borrow everything that we needed. And then at the end, we would wash that private lender totally out at the end of that.
To hold it.
Yeah, and then we didn't have, because we were still managing rental properties and still doing acquisitions and stuff like that. And there's tons of expenses in a business like that. So we didn't want to pull from those operational funds. We would just have each project allocated funds to the whole thing.
Right, so you started with your first deals were cash to invest, and then you ran out of cash, so you decided you were never going to invest anymore.
We just kept finding more money.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you gotta do.
Yeah. I mean,
If
you
you wanna
just-
build your investment business and you don't have millions of dollars of
It's just-
cash sitting in the bank, like, you gotta creatively finance it.
Yeah,
So what were you paying on your initial private money?
10%.
10%, 10 points?
Yeah, no points.
10% points. But your hard money business, what?
Our hard money business is currently 13 and 4.
13 and 4.
Yeah.
Is that for the first time or?
So we're still, obviously you gotta feel the market out, right? If you go too high, you're gonna not get as much business. So there's a point where there's a number where it makes a lot of sense to operate. We're just a hair higher than some of our friends in the business. And I'm still trying to decide if being a hair higher is losing opportunities for us. But right now it's working. So what I've actually found is that obviously the higher you go, the more experienced seasoned people will not use you because they have more opportunities and avenues for money, cheaper money. But the newer people will use you because they don't have as many opportunities, but then there's a little bit more hand-holding to go to that. So there's an area where you kind of want to get the best of both worlds. You want to get your repeat people. So is that number maybe floating a little bit for different people? Yes.
Doesn't that increase your risk as well? Because you're getting newer people, so they.
Yes, so yes, it does. It does. Now, I had a guy who probably gave me like 7 inquiries. And I told him, all right, dude, I'm not doing a deal with you until you bring me this deal. And I want it in the average price point and I want 65% ARV and all these things. And he brought me that deal and we did it. We're actually closing on it Friday. So I said, I've got to test you out. I don't want this 10 unit, $1 million. I'm not doing that deal with you. So don't send me anything until you send me this deal. So he did. So,
Yeah, oh, thank you.
thank you.
So Anch, how did you finance your flip?
Like I said, we reached out to our friends and our clients. What we did, we had a monthly real estate investor session with people that we reached out to. I joined a women's real estate investment group here in the DMV area. And I would send out messages to them and say, hey, we're doing a monthly investors session, telling you about what our investment, and we would like for you to join our session and hear what we're doing. And that's how we got some of our investors. I had a friend who I went out to lunch with, and I was just talking about real estate and what I was doing as far as investing. And I told her, I don't know why more people aren't private lenders, because you could get 10% on your money. And she physically perked up. Yes. And she was like, really? And she leaned forward on the table and she's like, I want to hear more. And when you tell people they're going to get 10% back on their money, when the bank is giving them 2%, they're gonna, yeah,
Not even.
they will listen, and that's, you
Yeah.
have to have the
You
talking points.
you have to find a way to open that conversation up. Like, you just don't go into that, right? You just
Yeah.
kind of wait for it. Like, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. Blah, blah, blah. Well, what do you do? Well, this is what I do. Oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, we give, we allow investors to get a 10% return secured by real estate. Well, that sounds interesting. Can you tell me more? So you just kind of blend it into the
Yes,
conversation.
yes.
Got it. So, what do you think? How would you address this? I'll ask a question on behalf of maybe someone in the audience who's thinking this, like, it's not good to go into business with friends or family, but that's kind of what you're suggesting here. So, how do you address someone maybe with that? I hate to say with that limiting belief, because in my opinion, you're offering, just like to sell a house for your friend or family member, you're offering them great service, great value. You've just discussed like 10% is better than they're gonna earn, in their bank account in many years in the stock markets, right? So you're giving them some benefit, and you've got plenty of equity in the real estate. So maybe I just answered the question. I just asked.
Yeah.
Do you have any other comments on that? Any other ways of thinking about it or approaching those conversations?
Yeah, it comes down to, but I think two things, like your integrity and how does that show to different people? Which is maybe a tougher conversation, but obviously it comes down to your integrity, and it also comes down to the way you come off to people. Like, if you're having an intelligent conversation about what you do and what you've accomplished, then people will genuinely see that you kind of know what you're talking about, right? And will want to investigate more. But really, it comes down to your integrity. And for me, if I'm taking anybody's money, it doesn't matter if it's friends or family, I would be scared to death that something would go wrong with that. So I am being very, very careful when I take somebody's money, because the first person to get paid back will not be me, it will be my investor. And that's just the way I feel about it. I would not want that staying on my record.
Right. And also, I presented it as like it's a business transaction, and so I told them we would do the promissory note and have a legal paper there for the transactions. It wasn't just like, oh, give us your money and we'll give you some money back at the end. It was like we signed legal documents and had it notarized, and so that they know we can have some legal recourse if something should happen, or if you didn't pay.
In the beginning, everybody would get a deed of trust and a mortgage note, promissory note, get personal guarantee. And then we got to the point where we were just basically just taking their money unsecured. Yeah. Just because they didn't care. I mean, they knew we were gonna do right by them. And now with the hard money business, our name is on the document, so we're just giving them a promissory note.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously better, you know, to just have an unsecured loan that you can use for the deals you're doing. But again, we're prefacing all this for anybody who's listening and thinking about getting into it for the first time. The deal like you manage your risk in buying the deal at the right price and having the team to execute the deal. If you have the deal and you know that there's plenty of spread, then giving people good interest and letting them come in on the equity side is doing them a favor. If the deal doesn't make sense and you're trying to get money from friends or private money lenders, then you're putting them at risk. So I think there's an element of sourcing the deal and analyzing correctly, which you can do from taking these, you know, mastermind groups, the learning. I'll do a class this fall on the mastermind to do some of the analysis work. All that needs to come in the sourcing conversation. Then in the financing conversation, you should feel comfortable, I think, to go out and ask around and try to find the money if you want to build your investment business. If that's your desire, you've got to finance it somehow. And if you don't have the millions in the bank, you're going to have to raise private capital.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing right now that all investors are seeing is the ability to find a good deal. That's the hardest thing right now. I don't think funding a deal is hard right now. Would you agree?
But they still ask you for 20% down, 80% LTV, so you still have to get the cash to come up with the 20%.
Not with private money, you know.
I contacted two private lender and that's what they asked me, 20% down.
Yeah, well, keep talking to people.
Well, the lead generation strategies kind of work the same way for, you know, you've now got a database of people, and maybe you're tagging people in whatever database you're using as potential investors. And now you're tracking part of your engine is finding deals, and part of it is raising private capital. If that's your goal, and if that's part of your trajectory to get your investment portfolio started and growing.
I talked about that in my last presentation, but one of my very first private lender was a guy that I got in contact with via direct mail campaign. And he was an investor that had like 100 local properties, so he already had money. So you got to just kind of know who you're talking to and what questions to ask them. Obviously, this is not a motivated seller, right? He's got 100 properties, he's got a good operation, but now he could be a private lender, right?
That's actually a great kind of part of your process. If it's not a motivated seller financially, I would think they're trending towards, you know, being a good candidate for the passive investment.
Yeah.
Good. All right, we'll move on from that topic. We've got 25 minutes left. We'll try to take a few questions at the end. If you have questions, is this a webinar or is this a meeting? Throw them in the chat and then I'll get to them between now and when we're finished. All right, so financing, we talked a little bit about that. The feasibility studies. As agents, we're negotiating inspections, contingencies, and all that. Obviously, if you bought your home, you did your own inspection, probably, unless you bought it in the last 6 months, but most likely. But as an investor, what's different about that contract period? And you probably went through a bit of this, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but what are the differences for people who they listen to this talk, they're motivated, they're going, reading, learning, they get their deal, they're doing their feasibility to decide if they want to go forwards. How are you approaching that?
For a single family, it's pretty easy. Obviously, you're going to know what the rents are. You're going to know what the ARV is. You're going to know the level of rehab. The only factor that's kind of moving around is the market. You know, where's the market going? You know, if you're going to hold it, where are rates? What's that environment look like? So that's kind of like the variable factor. Everything else is pretty much the same. Like the ARV is still trending upwards somewhat, and you know, rehab you know, the supplies were more expensive a while ago and they came back down, but for single family, it's pretty easy. Like we're kind of knowing in the front. Yeah.
So how about estimating
contract.
the rehab costs as part of that?
In what way?
Did you talk about that?
No, I didn't talk about that.
So you
Neither
mentioned that
presentation.
it's easier in residential
Mhm.
because you know how much the rehab's gonna be.
Yeah.
But I would say that's probably the single fact that if you're gonna walk away from a deal, it's because you put it under contract and then before you closed, if you do have that inspection, I guess you're doing all yours as is
Yeah.
because you have the contracting background. But let's say you're a hard money lender and, you know, someone's under contract, like, what would they be looking for to walk away, or would,
Oh,
what
okay.
would you say to keep going? Like,
So
that's really
yeah,
the critical factor that I want people to think about when they're getting these.
for a
deals.
long time, and the number doesn't make any sense anymore, but we looked at what our average rehab was, and we found the average rehab cost per square foot. So we could add that to any deal. But we found that number was a little bit hard to go with if you had things like the big ticket items, like a roof, HVAC, windows, a major electric, major plumbing. If you had those, or foundation issues, if you had those kind of things, those were kind of outside of it. And then just a general rehab, you could use your average rehab per square foot number, which that number is kind of moving around a lot, but basically you want to look at a project like that, like what's it going to cost to kind of do a cosmetic rehab? And then do I have to address windows, 300 times every window in the house? A roof is going to be, $8,000 or whatever. HVAC could be 8 to 12. And then some of these crazier things like electrical, plumbing, or, foundation issue could be really expensive. So that's kind of how we look at it. What major things need done, and this is based on the square footage, the cosmetic rehab.
Is there anything to add to that?
We just had our contractor walk through and give us an estimate of how much he thought it would cost to renovate the place. And
That's actually the easier way to do it.
yeah, and then we added 20% onto that.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say starting out, or if you don't have like a really, really tried and true contractor, you want to go out and get the 3 bids before you have money go hard. So, unless it's an as-is offer, and even if it is as is, I mean, I'm not telling you get out of your contract, but like get those estimates, because the single way you're going to lose money on a property, in my experience, or the highest probability, is you're underestimating your rehab costs and you don't have the cash to finish.
Yeah.
And then you got to go out and borrow more money, this, and that, and the other thing. So getting those estimates, getting everything lined up so that the day you close, your contractor's getting on site the next day to dump. You're not losing any time, and you're making sure you're in front of. And that's all happening before the close date, just like in your agent. So don't treat your investment property unlike you would serve your client, right? You're the client on that acquisition, and you need to make sure that you're protected once you get into the house using your expertise in real estate. So that's what I'll say about feasibility. You bought it, the rehab is going well. How are you managing the rentals? What's your approach there?
Managing rentals,
Yes, you have an in-house property manager,
not anymore. We have,
Not anymore.
we have a management company.
you have a management company.
But we did have an in-house management company, so I can speak to that.
Sure, so maybe
Yeah.
the pros and cons of trying to do it yourself and hiring a management company. I'm biased, so I won't give my comments.
Yeah, so if you're gonna do it in-house, you're really gonna have to spend a lot of time with that person if they don't come from that background. And so you're gonna be doing a lot of it yourself in the beginning until you get that person up to speed. But obviously, the most important thing is that you have a good product that you're renting into, and then that you have a 100% solid process to find the right people to put them in there. That's what it all starts with. If you can get the right people, then you can mitigate most of the problems on the backside. But once you have them in there, obviously you want to, make sure they're paying on time. You probably want to walk through quarterly, make sure we do this thing called a safe and secure inspection. This was my partner's side of the business, so I didn't really get myself too involved with it. But we would walk through quarterly, or maybe it was every 6 months or something. That's what it was, I think. And they did a safe and secure where they just checked everything. They checked the filters, made sure there's no broken glass, there's no leaks or anything. Everything was working fine, and we could kind of get our eyes on the property and make sure that, you know, there wasn't extra people living there, or there were more animals or whatever, or they were taking care of the place in general. And then we were doing 1 year leases, and then we just left everybody on a month after that. And that made it easier to kind of do rent increases after that, as the market went up.
And then, I mean, I started out, we were doing all of the management in-house. So we were painting when there was a turnover. We were doing all the
mini
leasing,
rehabs,
all the
yeah.
maintenance, everything as much as we could. And that was like a full-time
Mhm.
job for us. As it turns out, you know, we enjoyed, you know, the process of doing that, and we were able to kind of spin off a property management company. But most of our clients are people who are looking for a passive investment opportunity. And if you're trying to manage it yourself, you really have to consider, you know, it's not necessarily a passive investment. It's more of a good investment and a part-time job.
Mhm.
And it's not gonna have to be all the time you're managing certain things that come up. But when the tenant's turning over, if it's a bad tenant, it actually could be a substantial job,
Yeah.
because you're constantly handling that work. There's legal issues involved, sometimes negotiating, it's better to have a third party. So I think the conversation is like, do you want to be an active investor who's kind of not part of your daily work involved in the management? Or, and this is what we would recommend, is make sure the deal makes sense with that management fee in there. So you can focus your time on finding and funding the deals and building your investment portfolio, and then hand off the property management to a company that's able to execute on the plan. And frankly, you can save costs on maintenance requests, because chances are they have in-house maintenance, as well as, you know, their leasing is going to be competitive. I think most leasing happens off of the MLS. And so sometimes realtors are trying to do the MLS listing. It's not always going to be your highest rent price for the most eligible, you know, renter.
I agree with that. The only thing I would say is that in the beginning, I feel like it was more advantageous to kind of understand what you're managing,
Yeah.
right? Even when you have a manager.
Sure.
That's the only thing I would add.
And managing the manager is a
Yeah.
thing, making sure, you know, you're getting the reports, you're looking at the reports, you're holding your manager accountable, just like you hold your contractor accountable, your title agent, your realtor, right? You're not just completely passive in the process, but it's not a daily thing. You're not
Yeah.
answering calls on Thanksgiving. You're not, you know, getting into legal disputes and you don't know anything about it. Yeah. So that's the advantage of going with a management company. All right. If you have any questions about management, happy to talk offline about that process. Last thing I have on here, and then we can get to questions. Got about 15 minutes left. Selling. So with your rentals, I guess for you, maybe you could talk about why it's good to hold, why it's good to flip. But what's your mentality when you're selling your investment properties?
So what we did, we were looking at all kinds of properties, and if anything multi-family came in, we would, if it made sense, obviously, still has to meet the criteria. Any multis, duplexes, we owned some, mostly duplexes, some triplexes. We owned an 8-unit, a 4-unit. That was the stuff that we were fixing and holding. Anything else, singles, we were pretty much either wholesaling them if we didn't like the flip opportunity or the location. If we liked the opportunity, or if we liked the location and the size of the rehab, then we would flip it. So we would put it in the wholesale bucket, we put it in the flip bucket, or we put it in the buy and hold bucket, depending on what it was and the level of rehab and location. And then just recently, in the last couple of years, we bought a couple singles and put it in our portfolio because they made sense as Airbnbs. But pretty much everything we had, other than those recent singles, were all 2, 3, 4, and 8-unit building. So that's kind of how we, as it came in, we decided what we were going to do with it.
Nice. Would you say you're holding more now or flipping more now?
We're not doing anything now. We've got what we've got, which at one point we were like 50 units. So now we're we're down from that because we've sold off a couple of 1031s. We got 1031 on one deal, a couple duplexes. But we're down with buying storage, so,
You're holding now.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're holding, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anch, what about you? What was your initial intent to do the flip versus the rental?
The reason why we wanted to do the flip was we wanted to build up that cash in our account. We wanted to build up our money so that we can buy other properties, and we didn't want to hold it because we were going by this formula of we wanted to do 2 flips and then a hold, and keep doing it that way, 2 flips and a hold.
Nice. Yeah, so kind of in summary, selling is gonna be raising cash. Holding is gonna be kind of building equity, so it depends on your goal. Right, if you have a contracting team, you need the cash flow. Flipping may be better, but if you want to grow kind of more on the net worth side, your balance sheet, holding for 20 years is gonna be worth a whole lot. You're gonna pay down a bunch of debt, which is arguably the best, most secure way of building equity, right? Is through the debt pay down, plus you're gonna get some rental cash flow. So I think a lot of people get into business. They flip, and you do learn a lot from those flips. So there's value in that. But it's like you can learn or you can earn, right? So I usually steer people towards the rental because I regret anything I sold. It's now worth more than when I sold it.
Yeah.
And then I've learned that, you can raise cash through private capital if you need it. And that's been how I've, part of the way I've been able to grow our portfolio. So things to think about if you're thinking about flipping versus holding.
Yeah, that's been my biggest regret, selling so much stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's like people who have been in the game long enough, like, I feel like that's a theme
Mhm.
versus
Yep.
people
Yep.
who are flipping a ton. It's very hard work to flip. You have to stay on top of every single part of the transaction, from finding, contract, financing, going through the list here. Managing, contracting, rehabbing, selling, and you've lost the ability to grow equity. over the long run.
You've given up all the appreciation, all the tax advantages, and you're heavily taxed.
I would say also if you've got bad debt, that would be another, that kind of goes along with the raised cash, but if you upside down, you've got to get out of something, maybe like that would be, that's not a good reason to sell. And frankly, if you held it, figured out how to hold it, you'd probably get on the right side of it in the long run. Yeah. All right. So what else do I have here? Don't have anything else. Anybody else have
I
any
think we
questions?
covered a lot of ground here.
I wanted to speed through everything.
Andrew, I want to hear about about your building that you
Okay.
just went under contract.
Yeah,
And kind of like
sure.
the evolution and how that
Yep.
started and how you got to capital
Yeah.
and everything.
So I got an email from a broker. It was for a property in Essex. It was I normally would go for this size. It was 350 units. And I usually ask brokers when I get a deal from them, what's the pricing guidance? Because the ask price isn't always what it's going to go for. And commercial brokers typically are going to give you like, if they're asking $1 million, guidance is maybe 900,000, which means chances are it's not going to sell for $1 million.
Right.
So I asked him pricing guidance and I asked him, and he gave me a number that was 73,000 per unit. And I knew immediately for that market, 73,000 a unit, it's 354 units, is big. We were a little bit over our heads on it. I went and saw it. I also look at a lot because it's good to know the markets.
Yeah.
And so it looked like a deal, but at the end of the showing, I basically told him, look, like this is a little bit large for us. And he's like, well, the same owner. First of all, I walk into this property and there's a leasing office and the woman there is typing at a typewriter.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lord.
So she's writing up her rental receipts because they don't do any online payments. They don't do any online,
That's a good sign.
anything.
Okay,
And so the guy's grandfather bought it in the fifties, passed it to his father. He's now third generation,
right,
doesn't have any kids, has two nieces. He's gonna leave it all to, and he's getting up there in terms of age.
Yeah.
So like, I'm sure you went through this. If they're retired, trying to leave a legacy, those are the ideal, paid off all their debt, whatever, those are the ideal sellers, same with agency. So anyway, so he fit that description, and I loved the idea of the purchase price per unit, because I knew there was value in it. So but I said it was a little too big. So, oh, the seller has another property, kind of like what you were talking about. This was in Arbutus area, so off Wilkins Ave towards UMBC,
okay, yeah,
like where the golf course is and all that. And I drove there for the tour of that property, and I had called. No, the first time I saw it by myself. There was a brand new CVS I passed within like a quarter mile, and then right across from this was like you guys might know, Weiss. There was a Truist,
okay, yeah,
really good looking retail,
right,
which I didn't know the block, so I wasn't sure, but like that was a good sign to me. This was 110 units.
okay,
And this was, and I didn't know the pricing guidance, but I figured I'd see it. Same situation, leasing office, same typewriter, box of receipts. These two lease property managers were trying to quit a few years back. So he just kept saying like, how much is it gonna cost to keep you? Because he didn't want to deal with bringing in and training managers.
yeah,
So these are like in their 70s, making $90,000 a year.
wow,
Like, and like our managers,
yeah.
yeah, don't make 90,000.
Yeah.
They should, and we're trying to get there.
Uh,
So I knew there was like operational improvements, and that usually comes with like value. So it's value add. You can add value through, updating like structural, which is heavy construction, or light, which is like cosmetic. So like kitchens, bathrooms, floors, lights, wall, right? Maybe a dog run on the outside. These are like light things that will add value. So this one had both. They were outdated apartments, and operationally they were like very archaic. So that's when the negotiation started. I asked him like, where we at with pricing? He threw out a number. We figured where we wanted to be, and we ended up winning. But I'll also say the second time we went back, I hired an electrician to look at, they were fuse boxes. So that's one of the upgrades we'll do to get them to breakers. So that's gonna be an expense. And then I brought a general contractor. So before I made my offer, I walked through with, just to make sure, like, he's like, look, as is, the fuse boxes will work. You can phase in the breaker updates. And I've done a little bit of the construction, so I might not recommend your first project, you go into something like that, but it makes sense for where we're at. And I've got all my marketing materials ready to go, signed today. Some of you will probably get it tomorrow. It didn't plan it like this, but it's working out pretty well. And we raised the money, we get the bank loan, and we close. We have until end of August to close. So there's a good amount of time for us to make sure we have everything set up. And then my role as acquisitions kind of ends. Jade is my partner. She runs the management company, so we kind of hand it off to the management company to execute on the leasing and the maintenance stuff. And we hire outside consultants, commercial deal. There's a little bit of budget to dedicate to like professionals, but this is also worth why scaling is valuable, because your team is now operations, different people. So once you get started, you got to do a lot of it yourself, but we're hiring basically outside support on the capital CapEx plan, the construction management. He's a rep for us, just like you'd hire a title agent to manage that construction process. So I'm not the lead. So that's the story.
That's a GC, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks. Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah,
Sounds like a big one.
it is.
Yeah.
What
Are they all like, 1 and 2 beds or?
one, yeah, mostly ones and twos, with a few threes. Yeah. And
How high
here at
is it?
UMBC, we do a lot of student housing as well. That's been a niche we've had some
Yeah, that's what I was
success.
thinking when you said that.
And it's there, they don't do any advertising at UMBC, so we're probably gonna take a third of the units to do like a more major upgrade, keep the rest with light upgrade. And kind of set aside those for UMBC students and just market hard, because for students, if you're in a student housing market, January to May is the prime time for student housing leasing.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to get everything done, so next January, we can hit the advertising to UMBC students really hard.
How many floors is 100?
Two.
Only
So
two
it's
floors?
garden style,
Oh,
which
wow.
is huge.
You got a lot of weight in there.
Because we did some mid-rise in Baltimore City, and it's been giving us a lot of problems with the elevator, fire suppression. But the 2 stories, they don't have any of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's, yeah, and they're all brick structurally,
Okay, so very low maintenance on the exterior.
a lot of the roofs were redone. So, again, it's like what I did 7 years ago, and just like being almost full-time in the investment world allowed me to see the opportunity in this. So for those starting out, I would say, don't look at that, the outcome of where it was, but like the exact thing Bill was talking about, same thing Anch went through, like everything that, like learning and reading resources out there, all the networking, like that builds up to this point. It's been a fun ride. All right, questions, we've got 2 minutes. I joined late. Oh, section 8.
Catch the next class.
Wait, Tanya, you gotta come earlier next time. I actually gotta leave. Yes, I'm putting my email in here, and I will direct Bill and Anch to do the same. If you have individual questions, I don't know how long you're sticking around. I know you did your full hour.
Yeah, I gotta getting rolling.
Yeah, it sounds like we're gonna have to stop.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't have more time for more questions. We can put our emails in.
Yeah, yeah.
And then maybe on the whiteboard for everybody here in person. Then I guess ask away. To me, Bill, I'm sure you're happy to receive questions. And then I do a master class, which is like kind of more for beginners. That'll happen in the fall. And this year I'm also doing a mastermind, which in the past were kind of lumped together, but the mastermind is going to be there will be an application required. And we're looking to get people who have a little bit more of a track record. So if I guess 0 to 5 to 10 units, maybe the masterclass makes more sense. Look out for that. And if you're 10 units and up and are interested in kind of being part of a little mastermind group, we will also be receiving applications for that. That's all going to be the fall. So I got to close this deal first.
Yeah, first things first. Yeah.
Laser focused.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Bill. Thanks.
Yeah,
Anch.
good questions.
Yeah, we're at 5:30 on time.
Shut her down. Thank you. I'm trying to, yeah.
I'll let Peyton know she can come in. And
She's still here?
oh, she texted me, she had to put it in the box. Okay. You're welcome. Oh, now the comments are coming up. That's weird.
People are asking questions now?
No, they're just saying thank you.
Oh,
Great plays.
good.
All right, we're in the next.